Well, g'day and welcome. This is Home Loan Hacks episode 7. It's also the July update for outlook and market conditions. Great update last month. Thanks for the feedback. Fantastic interview. Sam White, very popular. Really appreciate the comments on that. This month, the interest rate outlook is steady. Rates didn't move again this week. 0.25% cash rate. Variable rates just under 3%. Fixed rates in the low 2s, 2.1, 2.2, pretty amazing. The property outlook's also holding very strong. CoreLogic, again, just a very small drop in Sydney last month. They're reporting a minus 0.8% in Sydney and 1.1% in Melbourne. I am noticing when I'm doing property searches in sales, a lot more price withheld. Not quite sure whether that means low sales withheld or just more people with more privacy. But market's been holding pretty solid. Who knows with the confidence coming up. A couple of schemes from the government. First home loan deposit scheme that had its second tranche started this last week. So July, 10,000 more eligibilities where the government would consider being your guarantor for a first home buyer. That's a really cracking scheme and you'd want to get on that quickly if you have 5% deposit in Sydney buying up to 700,000 and would make very significant savings on mortgage insurance or not needing a parent guarantor. The other big scheme that's got a lot of interest right now is the home builder. I'm going to have a more detailed comment on that in just a minute. So there'll be a short hack on that on the YouTube channel. Basically what it is a $25,000 cash grant for anybody who's doing a major renovation or a construction between June and December this year, 2020. So that's pretty hot and got a lot of inquiry on that at the moment. Some government provisioning comments. A lot of people took advantage of the pausing of their home loan. 800,000 people took repayment pauses on loans. That's just been extended. Just this week, there was commentary on the news about extension to January. So you do need to ask your bank. You do need to be in hardship or have loss of job or loss of income situation. But banks would consider extending a pause or starting a pause if people just needed to. It's not a credit situation. I'll make a comment on that, though, in just a second. Banks are also very open to considering for a short term, maybe 1 year interest only conversion on your home loan, which would normally need a full assessment and a full consideration by the bank, but in need on application, contact the bank to ask about that. This month's also the second tranche of the super release where a lot of people took out super early, up to $10,000 each. 20,000 for a couple before 1 July and since 1 July again. Concern on taking this out if you're not under the hardship requirement. I believe it's 20% loss of wage. Just be cautious on that because there's big penalties. It's also not something you can use towards a home deposit generally. And that's the last comment I've got is on all of these things is if you're taking out these provisions, they're seen as pauses and supports and the like. But in eyes of credit, they're seen as necessary conduct, and we need to see changed conduct before we would lend to you. We have had a number of people who have asked us about just taking it out just for the heck of it, and there's been a bit of news about that. Not sure if that's fact or fiction, but do it wisely and prudently, and give us a call if you're not sure. So that's it for July update. Trust that you're well. Terrible to hear the current Victorian situation. My brother's moved to Queensland and called himself a Queenslander. But seriously, wishing those in Victoria well and hope we get on top of this situation and hold the line. It looks like being a long run. All the best. Next topic I want to talk about is a scheme called Home Builder. Now, that's a really interesting one that came out a little left field. I didn't see it coming. I don't believe it had been informed heavily. Basically, there's a government scheme with it's a COVID stimulus type package to support the construction industry, which has more than 1 million people in that industry in Australia. So it's a $25,000 grant from the government if you enter into a building contract to construct or significantly renovate your home. Pretty awesome. It does have some eligibility requirements. So key ones, it's available if you're building a new home like a house and land, or doing a major renovation, or doing a knockdown and rebuild. The maximum amount of a house and land contract is $750,000. So it's targeted at first home buyers and reasonable normal housing. The minimum renovation budget, if it's just a renovation, is $150,000. So it has to be pretty significant renovation. And your existing home, if it's a renovation, can't be worth more than $1.5 million. The other threshold is income, where a single applicant can't earn more than $125,000 or a couple can't earn more than $200,000. This is based on your financial year 19 notice of assessment or newer, if you have a newer one. It's only for projects by a registered builder. So it has to be for example, like a fixed price building contract to a registered builder. It's not for owner builder or projects or bits and pieces. The contracts have to be signed this year, so from now, or 4th of June, on to 31 December 2020. So we've had a couple of clients who unfortunately had signed before that and just missed out. But yeah, those of you considering a land construct situation, that does take quite a while, so would be really worth checking that out. I'm not sure that the legislation is yet current, and most lenders don't know what to make of it. So you'd really need to be able to fund the activity yourself, be that by cash or by lending, and then expect that the grant would come later to put money back in your pocket. There's links and the like to the Treasury sites and frequently asked questions. So anybody who does want to know some more information, feel free to check in and I can update you on some more. Thanks very much. I hope that might be of use to you. It's been certainly strong inquiry on that through late June, early July, and trust that's been helpful.
Today on the show, we've got Elyse here as our special guest from Bell's Line Legal. So Elyse, we're lucky enough to share an office here with Elyse. I just thought I'd firstly tell us a little bit about your story, Elyse.
All 29 years of my story. I'm a Western Sydney girl. I was born in Penrith, right opposite the stadium, so big
Still
Panthers
a
fan.
Panthers fan?
Yeah, that's right. It's in the blood. Grew up in Kings Langley, so out sort of Western Sydney way. Still went to school out there. I went to uni, Western Sydney Uni, or UWS at the time. Studied law and social science. And just ended up moving to the Hawksebury by mistake, really, because it was affordable, and we had a big dog who didn't want to live in an apartment much longer. Once I finished my studies, I worked at a couple of different law firms doing different bits and pieces, mostly commercial things. I didn't take to criminal or family law too well.
Did you always want to study law? Was that sort of something early on that you decided was something for you?
Yeah, so when I was a kid, my parents always said I'd make a great lawyer, because I was always arguing with my brother. And I guess that sort of stuck with me, and I just went, I'll give it a go, and fortunate enough that something I enjoyed and something I did well at. So I just sort of, fell into it, I suppose. But I opened up my own firm almost 18 months ago now, so that's been going really well, and I just wanted to be the boss, I suppose, and do things my own way and be in charge of all the processes, and it's working out really well. I was lucky enough that the Loan Market team opened up this office around the same time and had space for me, so it's worked out fantastic.
Yeah, and you do a lot of conveyancing, and is that something you've always done, or always is property sort of been a focus for you?
I think pretty much every law firm will do conveyancing, because it's bread and butter for most firms. So I've always been doing conveyancing since I started as a solicitor, and I do enjoy it. It's not a lot of legal matters where you get happy clients, which is why I don't like family and criminal, because at the end of the day, they're not coming out of it saying, oh, thanks, that was great. Whereas conveyancing, everyone's happy. They've bought a home, they've sold a home, and it's nice nice to be able to get happy outcomes for clients as opposed to bad news.
Yeah. Well, I thought maybe today we'll sort of go through the buyer process a little bit and sort of chat about from the buyer's perspective and from the seller's perspective on each sort of part of that. So at what point does a solicitor or a conveyancer sort of get involved with the transaction, I suppose?
Yeah, so it's always a bit different, but ideally for a purchaser, once you've found a property that you like and you're considering putting an offer on the property, that's probably a good point in time to get a contract sent to your conveyancer or solicitor, just to make sure there's nothing nasty hidden in there, that the place isn't full of termites or there's no orders from council to knock it down or acquire the backyard, things like that might really make you reconsider putting in an offer or how much of an offer you might make.
Yeah, cool. And you say making an offer. What does that actually mean? Some first home buyers sort of might think that, okay, it's signed, sealed, delivered at that point, but what does actually making an offer mean? Or how do you do it?
So like everything, it's always a bit different, but it's usually you just say to the agent, we'd be happy to buy it at X amount of dollars. And typically there's some back and forth. Not a lot of vendors go, that's great, it's yours, let's sign it up. They'll come back with a higher offer and you'll wiggle your way to a middle ground. And it's not actually yours until you sign on the dotted line. So you can have an offer accepted verbally, but then someone comes along 10 minutes later with a higher offer and they can take it out from under you. So until you've signed up and you've paid your holding deposit, which is about 0.25%, so usually $1,000 or $2,000, depending how much the property is, it's not technically off the market until it's all signed up.
Yeah, cool. And when making those offers, is it just a dollar value that your buyers are normally discussing, or is there other things that they're talking about in terms of when they're making that offer? Are there certain terms or certain things that they might discuss at that point, or does that come later? Or?
Yeah, so certain key things, that's a really good time to bring up if you want a longer cooling off period. So standard cooling off period is 5 business days. And at the moment, it's really hard to get your loan approved, as you would know, in 5 days with a lot of banks.
ANZ won't get it done at the moment.
Yeah. So it's always, I always say ask for 10. It's better to have the time than not need it than have a five business day cooling off period that you're stressing to meet and it puts undue pressure on you. So it's a good time for, ask for an extended cooling off period. And if you have any specific needs, so if you're not going to be ready to settle for 3 months for whatever reason, that's the time you bring that up as part of your offer. So not just how much you want to pay for the property, but when you're going to be in a position to pay for the property is it's really important, because you don't want to sign that contract and pay your holding deposit and find out that you can't get a longer settlement period, and now you've paid a deposit and you're stuck in this contract where you've sort of lost your bargaining power. So any big ticket items like that, put those in with your offer. Cool.
So I've made my offer, it's been accepted, I go in and I sign, I have the property now.
So you've taken...
What actually has to happen?
Yeah, so there's a few different steps. So the first thing you do once your offer's accepted, you'll sign the contract and pay your 0.25% deposit. And that's essentially the price you pay to take the property off the market. So once you're signed up, the vendor can't then sell that property to anyone else. It's yours if you want it.
Yep.
And you have your cooling off period, so 5 to 10 business days. And that's when you do all your due diligence checks. So that's when you want to get your formal loan approval to make sure you can actually go through with the purchase. Pest and building report to make sure that it's not going to fall down on you in a couple of years' time. And any contractual negotiations. So you have your solicitor look through the contract, and if there's little things you want to tweak to make it a bit more in your favour, that's all done during the cooling off period. Then once you're satisfied that you can get your loan, that the house is in good condition, the contract suits you, then you pay the rest of the deposit. So it's usually a 5 or 10% deposit. If you're after a 5% deposit, that needs to be negotiated as well. And then you pay the rest of that deposit to the agent and your cooling off period ends, and then you're locked in, and we're in the settlement period. So
so just winding back to the actual signing, so that exchange, as we call it, what actually, so the vendor signs at the same time? Do they sign the same contract, or how does that actually work?
It's typically done by counterparts. So you'll sign a copy, the vendor will sign a copy, and they're technically exchanged when someone puts a date on them. So until the contracts are signed and dated, they don't have effect.
Okay.
And that date that we put on the front page of the contract is the exchange date, and then your cooling off period starts from there.
Cool. And from a buyer or a seller perspective either, what are some sort of common mistakes from the point of sort of offer to the end of cooling off? What can go wrong in that time, I suppose? How does someone maybe be underprepared or what?
Yeah, so one way to be underprepared is signing a contract before you've got a pre-approval for your loan, because then you're starting right from square one and your time's already ticking on your cooling off period, and you're just putting that much more pressure on your poor brokers, but as well as on yourself. If you don't know what you're doing with your finances, it can be a real scramble to meet that deadline for the cooling off period, while knowing that you're going to get that loan at the end of the day and be able to go through with the transaction. And I guess just relaxing. Some people, they sign the contract like, oh great, it's ours, we can relax a little bit now, but that's really the key part of the whole transaction is that cooling off period. Because if you wait too long to get your pest and building inspector out, you may not get the report on time, or if you get the report back and there's some things you're not too happy with and you've only got a day left to negotiate, it just adds more pressure. So the quicker you get everything done, the easier it is for you. That's right, yeah.
And what happens if you're getting towards the end of a cooling off period and you might not quite have your loan approval, or your pest and building hasn't come back yet? What happens if you hit that end of cooling off?
So it can always be extended. Obviously you have to ask for it to be extended and the vendor has to agree. Most vendors will, if it's not an unreasonable request. It's pretty common that people run out of time for one reason or another. It's usually because the bank's a bit slow to get back with the formal approval. And most vendors will want to keep you on the hook. They don't want to say, no, too bad, you've got to commit without your formal loan approval. If they think it's going to scare you off, which it would for a lot of people, they'll give you the extra couple of days rather than throw the deal in.
Yeah, sure. So a bit of a nerve-wracking time, the end of the cooling off for both buyer and seller. Yeah,
that's right.
Stressful time, I suppose.
Yeah, no one can really relax until it's cooled off and it's unconditional and everyone knows the deal's going ahead.
Yeah. And from the seller's perspective, so we've talked mostly about the buyers and the cool off and all that, but if someone wants to sell their property, how do they prepare for that, or what role would you play if someone's wanting to sell the property?
Yeah, so when you're looking to sell, the best thing you can do is sit down with your solicitor and conveyancer right at the start and have a long chat about your situation, what your goals are and what your plans are. Because as the vendor, you've got all the power. It's your house, you can sell it on your terms, but you need to make sure all that's in the contract from the start so that when settlement time comes, everything's fallen into place for you. So especially if you're selling with the intention of buying, it can be really tricky, that balancing act between trying to line them up so you're not homeless for a month between settlements. So if you have a chat to your solicitor or conveyancer at the start, there's a lot of ways you can work around that to make it work for you. So a longer settlement period, or even giving yourself 5-6 months, whatever it may be, to settle on your sale, but with an option to bring that forward if you find somewhere to purchase in the meantime, can take a lot of the stress off because you've got all this time if you need it. Or even if you're wanting to sell and maybe rent for a while before you buy, put a special condition in there that lets you rent the property back for a couple of months. That way you can sell, you don't have to move, it takes a bit of the pressure off, then you buy when you're ready. There's all kinds of little things like that.
So contracts are quite flexible in what you
that's
can
right.
do.
You can pretty much put whatever you like in there, within reason. So it doesn't hurt just to have a good chat with your representative and make sure they understand what your needs are and they can tailor a contract accordingly.
Nice. And we've spoken a little bit about conveyancers and solicitors. So what's the difference?
Well, the main difference is a conveyancer has studied to be a conveyancer. That's their job, that's what they do, and for the most part they do it really well. Whereas a solicitor has studied to be a lawyer. So we've not only studied property law and conveyancing, we've studied a whole range of other things. So the main difference between the two is the conveyancer can help you with the conveyance to buy or sell your property, whereas a solicitor can help you with all the sort of ancillary other bits and pieces that might pop up.
Like wills or
That's right.
stuff like that.
Yeah, wills and financial agreements. If you're buying a property and someone's putting in a lot more money than someone else, it might be a good idea to have some sort of agreement in place that for down the line how we're going to split up profits, or if the relationship breaks down, what's going to happen to this property. And as well as understanding other commitments. So if you're a business owner, how is the way you purchase this property going to potentially affect your business or your other assets down the line, and really give you more of a holistic approach, I suppose. And especially for those complicated matters where it's not as straightforward as most conveyances are. Conveyancer will usually have to refer you on to a solicitor. So you're going to end up paying your conveyancer's fees, and then you're going to be paying a solicitor as well to bring them up to speed and then handle the bits that are outside of the conveyancing scope, so it can end up being more expensive and more of a pain. Yeah.
Cool. So just in general, what are your sort of top couple of tips for buyers and sellers from a transaction point of view, I guess?
Yeah, the top tip for both buyers and sellers is just to be prepared. Know what you can borrow, know what you need to sell for, know what your plan is after you sign that contract, so that you don't end up with a short settlement period and you're not quite sure if you can make it or where you're going to be living because you haven't bought yet. So just take your time and have a plan. Speak to your mortgage broker, speak to your solicitor, see what all your options are, what you can and should be negotiating for, and that way it's so much less stressful for you, and because moving's stressful as it is without the unnecessary, other stresses you can add on yourself. So
yeah. Cool. So I guess we've got through the sort of the offers, the exchange, the end of the cool off. What happens after the end of the cool off in that settlement period up until settlement date? What sort of things go on there in terms of what the buyers or sellers have to be doing in that time?
Yeah, so there's not a great deal for the buyers and sellers to be doing themselves, apart from packing and getting ready to move. But your lawyer or your conveyancer will be doing a lot of checks for you. So we'll check council rates, what's owing, water rates is the same. We order a few certificates and bits and pieces like that just to make sure that when you buy this property, you're not also buying 3 years worth of unpaid council rates that are going to shock you the first time you get a rates notice. We're putting together all the forms you need to sign to buy a property. So forms if you're a first home buyer, so that you can get your concessions or exemptions. Forms saying that you're not a foreign investor or that you are a foreign investor. All those bits and pieces on your behalf, so that all we need to do is say, you sign here, this is what this is, and you can just relax.
Cool. And let's say settlement is due on the 29th. Does it always happen right on that date?
In an ideal world, Shane, it does, but in the real world, unfortunately not. Sometimes settlements get delayed, and you just don't.
And it's always the bank's fault, isn't it?
It is. You're laughing, but it is. 99% of the time, it's just because the bank's not ready. Sometimes they have their own internal processes, obviously, and someone hasn't filled out the right form at the right time, or it's on the wrong person's desk and they need an extra day. And it's it's a bit disheartening, especially if you're buying a home to move into and you've got to wait an extra day and you've got moving trucks organised and things like that. So
and I guess sometimes too, when you've got settlements lined up simultaneously, it could be the vendor's purchaser that's causing an issue or something like that. You just never know, do you?
Yeah, you don't, and it's mostly out of your control, really. If it's in the bank's hands or it's another party has caused the delay. There's always ways to work around things like this. If your settlement's fallen over but the vendor's moved out, you can ask to move in early, or you can ask for access to the garage to move all your big, heavy items in early, and little bits and pieces
and
like that.
And you find most parties are pretty flexible generally with those sorts of things.
Yeah, because everyone's pretty understanding. They know it's stressful. They're doing the exact same thing as you are, and I always find that people want to help each other out more so than be a stick in the mud. So sometimes just get a bit creative.
Yeah, and just as a matter of interest for people in terms of the actual physical settlement, obviously in the past checks used to throw around and all that sort of stuff. Do people still get into a room and pass checks around, or how does it actually happen?
Not in New South Wales, fortunately. it's all electronic now, so it's brilliant, because you used to get people showing up to the wrong place or at the wrong time, or they've spelled a name wrong on a check, and then settlements just thrown out the window. But now it's all online. All the funds get transmitted electronically. All the documents are electronic. It's just a matter of plugging in a little USB and putting in your password, and it settles. It's brilliant. Yeah.
Cool. One question we ask everyone, every guest, is, because most people obviously use mortgage brokers, is what makes a good mortgage broker? I guess, you're having to deal with a lot of mortgage brokers a lot of the time. What would you say are the sort of traits or characteristics that would make a good mortgage broker for a client, but also that's easy to work with as a solicitor, I suppose?
Yeah, I think on both fronts, it's just support. If you've got a mortgage broker that supports the whole way through, it's not just they find you your loan, they give you your docs, and then see you later. Someone who's there the whole way through the process, tells you things about the client that are relevant, that, oh, hey, we think we might need more of a cooling off period because they want to go with this bank and this bank's a bit slower, or we need a longer settlement period because it's a bit more complicated, there's other banks involved. And if you run into trouble and the bank's saying, we need this, that and the other, and we don't have it, a broker you can call and say, do you have these? Have you given it to them? And everyone's on the same page and working together. It just makes life that much easier for myself, especially, and for the client, because I'm not asking the client for things, and it just makes life nice and easy. Cool.
Well, we do ask everyone, you sort of tried to dodge this question, but in terms of life tips and business tips, so what sort of some important things you feel maybe for your business that have made you successful first? What sort of, I guess, what do you feel has made you successful in business, but also what do you think is important in life, I guess?
All right, you snuck that one in there on me. I think it's really important to know why you're doing what you're doing. Especially in business, it's that much easier to reach goals if you know why you want to reach those goals and why you're doing what you're doing, and it makes things more rewarding as well. And I think it's the same in your personal life. To have a purpose and to be trying to achieve something, but know why that it's important as well is pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Well, Elyse from Bellsline Legal, thanks for joining us today. And
thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
Well, g'day. Thanks so much, Shane and Elyse. That was really interesting about the legal side of property. Hey, my rant today is sense of entitlement. Now, we're not going to judge. We don't want to carry on and whatever. But we do see a lot of different personality types in the people that look for support. We love helping everyone. But some people, they come in, within a minute, you can see they own their own outcome. They understand the implications of credit a bit enough. They know that they should be saving. They know that credit cards bad, loans bad, like personal loans, home loans, car loans bad, and savings good. They understand they really want to be cautious with what they spend so they can afford the new home loan. Other people come in with a bag full of debt and they sort of feel that the bank owes them or something like that. Or even though they haven't been saving, even though they have got a lot of bad debt, it's not a big deal if that's their priority. But if you don't own that outcome, if you don't own that positive outcome, please don't also feel the bank owes you a favour. So, yeah, a little bit close to the bone maybe, and there's some people that do push it in this regard, but we're not going to judge. We're just going to coach, help, support and interpret what the banks can do, and hope that you can get the best outcome. All the best. Thanks a lot. That's it for episode 7 of Home Loan Hacks, which you can find on our YouTube channel as well. Thanks again, Elyse Powell from Bellsline Legal, for being our special guest this month, and all the best. Stay safe.